Hey, so I came across a network, which is not a network, I should say, a channel, which is pretty famous, BuzzFeed. This specific channel was BuzzFeed Yellow. Don't know if that means anything or not, but clearly the tone of the video was meant to be light-hearted. But I found myself getting gradually very angry over this, and I'll explain why. The video was entitled If Asians Said the Things White People Say. And I noticed there's two other videos if black people said the things white people say, and if Latinos say the things white people say. Um, but has about 9 million views, so it's viral. And I sort of try and remind myself, well, it's meant to be lighthearted. So basically the concept was um, getting actors to kind of say things that are on the surface well intentioned, but they're ignorant. And the idea is, well, this is what some white people say to Asians, like, where are you really from? That's an example. Rather than understanding that some people are Chinese American or Japanese American or whatever. So it was kind of mocking white ignorance. That was the concept. But what made me very angry about this, and maybe, people can say I'm being too serious or I'm overreacting. I'll come to that in a minute, but I think this sort of stuff divides people more than sends out any sort of progressive message. Um, Number one, it's assuming that all white people think the same, which is categorically not true. Although this does happen, although you do get a number of white people who do say things like this, the idea that everyone does is just not true. Um, and then you have a lot of comments underneath sort of endorsing that generalization. And I found myself on a bit of a crusade to confront some of these people because they were coming out with just these crude generalizations of all white people. Stuff like, oh, whites, watch this, and so on. Um, yeah, and I imagine it's the same on the other videos. Now, I would appreciate the humorous aspect if they had a video saying, for example, um, if black people said the thing, no, if white people said the things black people say, or if white people said, if it was inclusive. But by focusing solely on white people, it's totally racist in nature, and no one with any common sense would dispute that. Um, it really makes me angry because I do believe that anti-white racism is accepted in a way that racism against other groups isn't. In other words, if it was a video attacking all black people, it would probably be brought down after a while, or all Asians or whatever. Um, I remember a few years back on the Jimmy Kimmel, yeah, Jimmy Kimmel show. I was going to say Jimmy Fallon there. Jimmy Kimmel. There was a kid made a comment about all Chinese people should be killed. Stupid thing, right? But it was a kid. And what followed was angry protesters. I don't know if they were Chinese American or Chinese, but they basically wanted Jimmy Kimmel's blood. Even when he apologized, they still insisted on these angry demos. I thought the whole thing was massively taken out of proportion. But to be fair, a lot of Asian Americans said they didn't care. But clearly, this was quite a strong protest. And what pisses me off most of all is double standards. I always hate double standards, but there's definitely double standards when it comes to anti-white racism. Um, Part of the problem is white liberals are partly responsible for promoting this because number one, they refuse to accept the fact that people can have racist attitudes towards white people. Um, and it really sickens me, to be quite honest. Why? Because as a white guy, um, I like to think that I'm open-minded. I'm well-traveled. I always try to be sensitive when I'm talking to people. I always try to be reflective. I listen to what they're saying. Um, so I do resent being tarred with the same brush as those who are more ignorant. Um, and in more extreme cases, I resent being tarred with the same brush as, for example, the Ku Klux Klan. Um, what bothers me is then people try to validate it by giving a history lesson, like, oh well, this is what happened. You whites done this. You whites done that. You know, to me, the very core of racism is lazy generalizations about an entire race. So if you have the mentality that all whites are the same, then as far as I'm concerned, you're a racist card. If you really believe that, I mean, whites can refer to anybody from Russia to Argentina. It's it's a crazy generalization. Um, I hate actually talking about whites or blacks or Asians because the terms are very vague. They cover a very wide range of people. If it was more specific, at least that would be a bit more getting to something. But even then, it would be a generalization. Um, yeah, I mean, you can't say all Americans are this and that. You can't use it with nationalities. Basically, what I'm saying here is I despise generalizations. And, I'm not a fan of political correctness. I'm not saying everyone should be sensitive. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm getting at here, what I'm driving at, is that these sort of double standards are bullshit. And apparently, I'm not the only one that thinks so because looking at BuzzFeed's inbox, a lot of people were making the same sort of complaints that I'm making. And I think what they're doing is poisonous. I mean, the videos are designed as supposedly light-hearted, but when you look a bit further into it, actually they promote something extremely negative. They're trying to stir up division among people, um, and the white actors in those videos are contributing to it. Um, so it really, really, really fucks me off, and I will shout down anybody who thinks that they can attack me because of something that's beyond my control. I will fight them. Um, Orally speaking, you know, because I'm not going to apologize or be tarred with the same brush as some white supremacist. This is something that really makes my blood boil, to be quite honest, because it's just lazy. It's just lazy thinking. Um, I would never dream of talking about all Chinese as one and the same, all black people as one and the same, or something like that. So I don't think it's acceptable against white people. And if you think it is, you're part of the problem. And when I hear like this sort of validation, like, oh well, white people didn't go through repression in the same way. I don't think that's just because there's a different historical context doesn't excuse ignorance. So I'm well aware that white people didn't historically have the same issues, at least not in the same way, not in the same context. Although it's debatable because you can find plenty of examples in history of white people suffering, albeit often at the hands of other white people. But nevertheless, the idea that white people have never suffered in history is beyond crap. I mean, in the Third Reich, a lot of Jewish people were white. In Stalin's gulags, a lot of people were white. So, it's just a phony, it's a stupid thing to say. Um, I really despise people who deliberately go out of the way to try and stir up divisions among people. Um, I mean, what I'm doing here is raising my frustration and concern about the issues that I'm seeing here. And people say maybe I'm taking this too seriously. The video was clearly meant to be that hard. But I think behind that, I wouldn't care if they had another video to balance it out. Like just something like if um if white people said things so and so said, at least that would be fair. At least that would be balancing out. Because incidentally, You can find ignorant comments made towards white people. I mean, there's plenty of Asians probably that wouldn't be able to tell the difference between, say, a German and a Swede. So what's the difference? What is the difference? There is no difference. I'll leave it there, but I hate double standards, and I hate um, the fact that so many people buy into this crap. 9 million views. That doesn't mean 9 million people agree with it, but it's viral, and I think it's sending out the wrong message. And no, it's not about being butthurt. It's about just not liking double standards.